Hello, gang. Tattooed Biker here with you. And tonight, I have a wild episode packed with reports of Sasquatch encounters. And in the last story, an ex-park ranger shares his experience with the creature and then details exactly what happened after he told his supervisor. This one gets deep. So stalk that like button like a predatory cryptid, subscribe if you haven't already, and then grab your gear because it's time to ride to Bigfoot country.
Number 1. Hey TB, I saw Bigfoot once. This happened on a hunting trip a few years ago in rural Arkansas. I had scouted the area the day before and hung my old man climbing tree stand on a tree for the following morning's hunt. The only tree that I could use was a small oak with a main fork that was about 12 feet up off the ground and covered in poison oak. That means I could only climb up to that fork, and not my usual 20 or 25 feet, which I usually like to hunt from. I'm not allergic to poison oak, so that wasn't going to bother me. Well, I arrived early that day, around 4:45 a.m. I parked and got dressed. I've learned that to be a successful hunter, you have to be scent free. I dressed in my Realtree leafy suit and lacrosse rubber boots, sprayed down with scent killer, and doused my boots with persimmon scent, and walked to my stand around 5 a.m. The moon was full, and I could see with the use of my streamlight, green light pin. With the morning dew, I made no noise getting to my stand, and without scaring game off with a large flashlight. I made it to the stand and found that the top portion was twisted around to the back of the tree, and the bottom was moved to the base of the tree. Why did someone do this and not steal it? This was around 5:20 a.m. I was up in that tree, and I had my bow in my lap with my arrow pointing away from me, with it resting on my stand's gun rest. I pulled my earth scent wafers out and attached them to the outside of my backpack. I was facing south with 2 big oak trees about 25 yards away. The clouds were moving fast, and with a full moon, I could somewhat see in the dark. I was sitting very still and had everything camouflaged except my muzzy broadhead on the end of my arrow. By this time, it was around 5:30 a.m., and I heard something walk up from behind me. I slowly turned to see if I could spot it. It was big and black, and at first thought it was a couple of hogs. They were too big to be hogs, and I wondered if those cows were loose in the refuge. I wanted them to hurry up and leave so they wouldn't scare the deer when something brushed up against my leg. I didn't hear anything climb up the tree with me, so I kept still. I was looking forward when I saw a big black hand reach up and grab my broadhead. The hand was a shiny black, and these fingers were huge. The palms were also black, like a gorilla's. When it grabbed the broadhead, the razor blades cut him, and it yelled like a bull. It was louder than a car horn, and it was at my feet. It scared the crap out of me, and I started yelling back and cussing at it. Then it ran off through the woods, breaking trees and tearing down everything in its path. I just sat there a good 15 minutes until it got daylight, and then I left. I believe that I scared him or her as much as it scared me, but that's my one and only Bigfoot encounter. Thanks for reading. Signed, Chuck. Number 2. Dear Biker, I had an encounter with the Bigfoot or Sasquatch on the west coast of Vancouver Island back in the fall of 2002. I was hiking with my brother in late September, which is usually when bears are fattening up for hibernation and most likely to be aggressive, and since we were a couple of days' walk from either trailhead and medical attention, we were on very high alert. It had rained constantly, and we had only seen a single other hiker the whole time. He was traveling in the opposite direction as us, and we had camped beside him 2 nights prior. So for the whole trip, the only tracks that we saw that looked remotely fresh were a single set of hiking boots, coming towards us, left by a pleasant and solitary German tourist, and we only saw them in places with extensive overhead cover. All other tracks were washed out and filled in with rainwater due to the days and days of constant rain that was doing the best it could to mess up our vacation and make our packs even heavier. We were approaching a blackberry patch between ridges that hugged a small creek and smelled what we thought was a particularly stinky bear. And since the blackberries were on both sides of the trail, with only about 3 meters between them, we had our heads on a swivel. There were no overhanging trees, as this particular berry patch was dozens of meters across and 2 or more meters high. My older brother told me to hurry through as quick as we could, and made a comment about how smart it was that we were wearing bear bells, and how dangerous it is to startle a feeding bear. He was a few meters ahead of me, and when I looked down, I saw a footprint. It looked like an unshoed human footprint, except that it was 2 inches wider and at least 2 inches longer than mine, and I have size 14 feet. It also had these dermal ridges and only had a few raindrops in it, so whatever made it had stepped there literally moments before. The scariest thing about it was that there were no other prints around it. None whatsoever. So whatever had made that track had stepped out of the eastern side of the berry patch, across the 3-meter wide trail and into the western patch in a single step. I was so startled I looked around as much as I could before my brother told me to hurry the hell up. And that was the only track there, so that wasn't now a small puddle. So before you discount it as double-stepping bear paw print, there is no way a black bear could have crossed that 3-meter distance without leaving more prints. Say what you want about bears, but they aren't particularly graceful. There's also no grizzly bears on the island, and a cougar couldn't have left a print that looked anything like that, even if it stepped in its own track. It also couldn't have been a hoax because a person couldn't just stand in the berry patch with a pole on a footprint on it, as they would be interacting with bears on a dangerously consistent basis. Also, why would someone sit in a berry patch in the relentless West Coast rain in the hopes of maybe pranking people that might not pass by for days at a time? It just doesn't really make sense to go to that much effort, risk that kind of danger, and basically swim in a lacerating blackberry bush for a couple of days. I didn't believe in Sasquatch before, but now I don't know what to believe. I was a service plumber for years, and that smell is still in my top 5 worst smells of all time. And I will never forget the image of the raindrops hitting that fresh track as I stared there in disbelief. Thanks. Signed, Anonymous. Number 3. Dear Biker, this actually began several years ago when I worked for the Forestry Service, and one fall day when the sun had begun to set over the dense forest in the remote national park where I worked, I was patrolling the area, keeping an eye out for any signs of dangerous wildlife or illegal activities. Suddenly, I hear a limb snap, and I froze in my tracks, and as I slowly turned to my left, to the direction where I'd heard the sound, and there, standing before me, not even 10 yards away, was this absolutely massive creature, towering over me with its dark, shaggy, matted fur and piercing black eyes. My heart was pounding in my chest as I realized I was face to face with a Bigfoot. The creature let out this low, rumbling growl that was so deep. It wasn't exactly loud, but it was just low, like I could feel it rattle my chest before taking a single step backwards, and then almost melting back into the thick undergrowth. I was completely petrified, completely frozen with fear, and after about 30 seconds, I still couldn't move. It was literally like I was frozen to the spot. My mind raced as I tried to make sense of what I'd just seen. After another minute or two, my legs just gave way and I crumpled there to the ground, legs shaking. And I swear to you, I was crying. This thing had terrified me to my very core. I knew that I had to report the sighting to my superiors, but I couldn't shake the feeling that doing so might only result in ridicule and dismissal. The following day, I reluctantly shared my encounter with my supervisor, who immediately dismissed my claims as a figment of my imagination. He warned me to keep quiet about my sighting, insisting that the existence of a Bigfoot in a national park would cause a frenzy among the public and damage the park's reputation. Feeling conflicted and frustrated, I kept my encounter a secret, burying the memory deep within me. But as the days passed, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was hiding the truth from the world. I spent my nights plagued by vivid dreams of the Bigfoot, each more haunting and terrifying than the last. That experience forever changed my life in the Forestry Service. I began to really pay attention, not only to my surroundings, but to the more out-of-the-ordinary reports and sightings, and especially to the way they were handled. I began to see a pattern emerging. Each and every time that there was any kind of incident that could be construed as possibly anomalous or pointed to the existence of a creature that I now knew for a fact to be real, each time the incident was systematically buried and covered up. That was over 20 years ago now, and given my own personal experiences and sheer amount of time that I've spent in the forest and learning more about the topic, I feel that I'm fairly knowledgeable about Sasquatch. Over time and many reports of sightings and encounters others have had, I've also noticed a disturbing pattern. Now, I don't want to come off as sounding like some kind of conspiracy theory nut, but I say with all honesty and seriousness that I firmly believe that there is a national cover-up going on where Sasquatch is concerned. I honestly believe that the United States government, military, logging industry, and probably the oil industry as well, given the Alaskan pipeline, all know and accept that Bigfoot is real. What do they do with this knowledge? They cover it up. Why? Well, the money, of course. Do you remember the spotted owl fiasco from several years ago? Remember how it affected the logging industry? Imagine what would happen when Sasquatch is finally publicly acknowledged to be real. They'll almost certainly be considered an endangered species. Where do most Sasquatch seem to live? In the forest. What are the most sightings recorded? In the Pacific Northwest. Logging is a big business here. Just imagine what having an endangered species, such as the Sasquatch acknowledged as living in the forest where logging is so huge. What would that do to that industry? The industry would be basically shut down, at least for a while. That will have a devastating effect on all industries that use wood. Everything from construction to furniture manufacturing to the paper industry. Which means the entire publishing industry would have to make sweeping changes. Along with that would come changes to the transport, the delivery services that move the cut down trees, construction materials, paper, published books, furniture, etc. The Alaskan oil pipeline, I'm sure, be affected by the acceptance of Sasquatch as a living species too. Everything is connected, you see. Everything would be affected. Looking closer at the impact on the construction industry, not having wood to frame buildings or build walls, alternatives would need to be found. One very good one would be hempcrete. This is an excellent building material. It mixes hemp with lime or sand to form blocks. Hempcrete is naturally insulating, fire retardant, if not flat-out fireproof, and doesn't rot or attract insects like wood does. It would be a logical alternative for wood. However, turning to hempcrete would open the door to other hemp products, such as paper, fuel, health food, medication, clothing, and other industries for which it is currently illegal. Why is it illegal? Because it would do to these industries about what the publicly accepting Sasquatch as a species would do to the logging industry. It's in the best financial interest of the people involved that hemp remain illegal. Hemp grows faster than trees, it takes less water, and it gives more product yield per acre. No one financially invested in any industry it would affect wants it to be legalized. Again, everything is connected and everything would be affected. Those changes would, I'm sure, result in a lot of people losing their jobs. Business people who have millions of dollars invested in these industries would be hit hard right in the wallet. They'd likely lose millions, if not billions of dollars due to shutdowns and changes that would need to be made. Of course they don't want that to happen. They don't want to suffer the loss of that money or power and the prestige that come with it. These people know that Bigfoot is real. Given encounters I've heard over the years, it seems that logging trucks hit and kill Sasquatch sometimes as they're moving along dark forested roads. Most Sasquatch sightings actually occur when one of the creatures crosses the road in front of a vehicle. Whether these are young, inexperienced Sasquatch making a mistake, underestimating how fast a truck is moving, or what, I just don't know. But it seems that sometimes Sasquatch are struck down by logging trucks. Going on details of this topic I've come across in reports over the years, what happens after accidents like these are that the driver involved is told to never speak of what happened if he values his job. The body of the Sasquatch is then moved somewhere else or even burned on the spot to get rid of it. The powers that be in the United States government and these industries don't want a Bigfoot body to fall into the hands of someone who can use it to prove beyond doubt to the public at large that the creatures are real. Given the financial stakes for the people in charge, they'll go to great lengths to make sure that Sasquatch remains unaccepted as a living species. They throw out misinformation. They try and suppress sightings and other information on the topic, and when they can, employees are told not to talk about the subject or else lose their jobs. Most reports that point to a cover-up conspiracy on the matter are made many years after the encounter took place because the person making it waited until they retired before coming forward. This way, they don't run the risk of losing their job in doing so. The lengths that those in charge will go in order to keep Sasquatch relegated to the realm of folklore go well beyond threats of job loss or covering up a road accident, though. According to a few reports I've read over the years, there have been times when military units have been deployed with orders to kill every Sasquatch they can find in a given area. It seems to me that the powers that be in the United States and big business, and those two are often intertwined, would rather see Sasquatch eradicated as a species than ever acknowledge it. They would rather commit genocide than lose the money and power that having Bigfoot accepted as a real living species would ultimately cause. This angers me greatly. I want the conspiracy to end. I want Sasquatch publicly accepted as a real, living, endangered species. Yes, when this finally happens, it's going to cause a huge upheaval in a lot of ways, in a lot of areas. A lot will change, I think, though when things settle back down, the changes that will have been made will be for the better. I may be wrong, but I try to be optimistic. Still, regardless of what ultimately happens, I want Bigfoot acknowledged as a real species. Whether they are non-human animals or some ancestors of ours, I just don't know. Personally, I think they're closer to apes than humans. Regardless, though, I want them publicly accepted as a species. I've seen them. I've had encounters with them when I didn't see the creature, but I knew it was there. I know for a fact that these creatures are real. It's way past time for them to be accepted by the scientific community, the United States government, the general public, and everyone else. It's past time for the conspiracy, lies, and cover-ups to end. Signed, Anonymous. And there it is. All the Bigfoot encounter stories and reports that I have for you tonight. So what did you think about these? I'm anxious to hear your thoughts and theories down in the comment section, but please, keep it respectful for the witnesses and their families, And if you've had an encounter with the unexplained and would like to share your story, just send it to the email address in the description and it just may wind up in a future video. Thanks so much for riding with me tonight. And as always, stay curious, stay vigilant, stay safe, and I'll be seeing you on down the road a ways. Biker out.